Hey everyone, I'm Sam, and it's great to be back in the chair at Overkill Reviews. It's been a while. I guess I've been pretty busy behind the camera, producing a whole bunch of shit I can't even tell you about. Sorry about that, but rest assured, I hope there's a lot of cool stuff coming your way from Banger Films. Well, why am I here? Well, we hit the 200,000 subscriber mark, which is amazing. We're almost at the 250,000 subscribers on BangerTV. I never thought I'd say those words. And so to celebrate, we're here to give you a bonus review. There's been so much good metal, some important metal records in recent weeks, so I'm back in the chair. This week's video is brought to you by one of our Patreon donors, Confused Records, and here's what they have to say. Do you remember the Bay Area thrash scene of the 80s? Or 90s Florida death metal? Well, they say it's happening again, and this time it's coming from Texas. And they're home to a bunch of new extreme metal bands like Pantheon, Overt Enemy, Unholy Desecration, Confused, and Pulsus. So we're giving a special shout out to the people over at Confused Records. And just a reminder, if you'd like a special thanks to you, your band, your label, your pet, I don't know, join us at the Shout Out at the Devil tier. And a reminder, of course, that you can support us at the $1 a month and help us hit that stretch goal where we can finally do the all-day Lockhorns Marathon. Okay, enough business, enough pitching. This is the real reason I'm here. That is a track off the new solo record from Mark Morton, guitarist of Lamb of God. The album is called Anesthetic, and it's out on WPP Records / Spine Farm. And that song in particular features Alyssa White Glues from Arch Enemy and Randy Blythe. Not Blythe. He cornered me at Heavy MTL recently, said, dude, it's not Blythe, it's Blythe, get it right. Let's talk about Mark Morton. Okay, I don't need to get into a long-winded bio about Lamb of God. You guys know the story. They've been around since 1994. First is Burn the Priest. They have many successful records, and they're now really one of the stalwarts of the metal community. This is the first solo record from Mark Morton, who is, one of the principal songwriters and lyricists of Lamb of God. The most important thing to note before we get started is this is not a metal record. This is a rock record being reviewed on a metal review show. So let's proceed with some caution. So like many of you, the first time I heard anything from this record was from the first two lead tracks, Cross Off with Chester Bennington on vocals, and the clip we heard at the top, Truth is Dead. And you now know that this is an album that Mark wrote and conceived actually with the producer Josh Wilbur, and he basically called up all of his favorite vocalists that he really wanted to work with. I would say overall this album has a very kind of late 90s, early 2000s hard rock feel. No song sounds like Alice in Chains per se, but the album has kind of a modern Alice in Chains type vibe if I was to try and summarize it all. Although this is without doubt a rock record, there's some pretty diverse vocal approaches on this record. We get everyone from Jacoby from Papa Roach to Mark Lanegan from Screaming Trees, and one of my sort of partly in the closet favorites, Miles Kennedy, who I think is actually a great vocalist, and there's a great song with him on this album. It's clear that Mark has his roots in that bluesy rock feeling. I know, because I know him, that some of his favorite guitarists are Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, etc. And that really comes across on this record. Now, the caveat is that I don't really listen to this kind of rock music very often, but for the album that this is and the style that Mark was going for. I think without question, the Chester track off the top is super strong, and the track with Alyssa and Randy, The Truth Is Dead, are two of the strongest, but they're also two of the most metal, so I suppose that's why I like them. I think the one surprise in here is actually the song that people have been talking about the least, and that's the track Imaginary Days, which Mark Morton himself sings and does a pretty damn good job. So look out, Randy, maybe Mark is starting to nip at your heels a little bit there. Now, on the downside, this was tricky for me to review. One, because I'm a huge Lamb of God fan, and so a record from Mark Morton I'm excited about, and honestly, I want to hear some Lamb of God riffs in there. But the thing about this record is, as I was listening to it more and more, I began craving something from Mark that was a further departure away from Lamb of God and that metal sound we know from him, and it made me think of Nurgle's recent side project where he really stepped away from the behemoth sound and did something really different. And I suppose, in many ways, I'd still like to hear that record from Mark. And in reading some of the interviews that Mark's done for this record leading up to my review, I guess the way it went is Mark wanted to create this record, and it was actually the producer, Josh Wilbur, who kind of pushed him to create some more Lamb of God friendly songs on there because, knuckle-dragging metalheads like me, that's what we want to hear. And I think that, in the end, is a bit of a mixed blessing because it's an album which I wished, again, Mark would have spread his wings a little bit wider on. So, in the end, I guess the record kind of left me wondering, who is this album for? Is it for Lamb of God fans? Is it for rock fans that listen to the radio? I'm not quite sure. But maybe in the end it was a record for Mark, by Mark, and that's totally fine by me. Because in the end, Mark is Mark, and I'm a big fan of Lamb of God, and at the end of the day, it actually sent me back to listening to a bunch of Lamb of God records, so things could be worse. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 skulls on Overkill Reviews. But before we go, here's something as a special thank you to all of our Patreon donors. We're having a contest. We're giving away 2 Mark Morton prize packs, more music, more merch, and this is a contest for Patreon contributors at our $10 a month and up tiers. You can go to the Patreon page, and under the post that says Mark Morton Contest, you answer this question. What's the name of the song on the album that Mark Morton sings on? And we'll pick 2 names at random from the list of comments. More important than any of this, I want to hear what you have to say about my review. Pretty contentious one. Anyway, tell us what you think. It's good to be back. See you next time.